You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, whatever time it is. Welcome to RBLR Lightning. I'm Joe Zamataro, filling in as host for Jake Ricker, and beside me from Bolt Report, Michael Wax, in for Matt Gannon. Michael, I kind of feel like we're emulating the Bolts from a few weeks ago with a bunch of call-ups, filling in for injuries. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I am very excited that we no longer have to talk about or go through the late night road games for the Lightning. Those are all done for the rest of the year.
I think I need to restock my supply of Red Bull and coffee. That was definitely a rough one. But it was a very exciting week. You know, I'm looking forward to getting this episode underway. We had a bunch of wins that we'll cover in this episode. We'll also go over news and injuries, list our top 3 stars of the week, and take a look at the road ahead. Obviously, this week is going to have a bit of a different feel, so leave a comment below if you like what you're seeing, or tell us what you hate about the show, as well as your thoughts on the week for our Bolts. First up for injuries, let's lead with the good news. Tanner Jeannot made his return this past week, playing against the Vegas Golden Knights, and even recorded a point on Sunday versus the Ducks. That was his first point since December 19th. It's been a long road getting him back on the ice since his initial injury on January 6th, and it's good to see him on the ice. However, missing from the ice on Sunday were a couple of the large pillars on our team, namely Victor Hedman and Braden Point. Both are listed as day-to-day with a lower body injury. I'm personally hoping they just took a couple of maintenance days rather than play the back-to-back games in California. Michael, I don't know if you heard anything additional from that.
Nothing additional, but I'd agree with you. In most circumstances, like if we talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think they would have played through this because the Lightning were still in the middle of their playoff question marks with being behind Detroit and having like New York and Washington and all those teams behind them. But they've separated themselves from the pack, and they've given themselves the opportunity to rest guys like this. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know what the back-to-back schedule looks like for the rest of the season, but if they clinch early, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Stamkos get a game. Maybe not Kucherov because he's in that Art Ross Trophy race and he likes to put up points and win. But Hedman maybe gets another one. Eric Chernak maybe gets a game. Like, that wouldn't really surprise me for the rest of the season.
Well, we have started to see that a bit last season where they're putting guys resting. I don't know so much that they would say that there was a lower body injury with them. I believe that Point may have taken a pretty hard shot off the foot in one of the games. So hopefully they'll be back in action soon. Let's get started with the first game of the West Coast road trip, which was Tuesday against the Golden Knights. It was a rough start for the road trip. It's just about a minute in. The Bolts surrendered the first goal on a very nifty passing play by the Golden Knights on a 3-on-1. However, Hagel and Sorelli showed their own passing skills on a 2-on-0 just 5 minutes later in the period for a huge shorthanded goal. A goal from a red-hot Anthony Duclair would put the Bolts up, and the Golden Knights from there would never again see the lead. The Lightning win this one 5-3.
Thought it was a really good game after the first couple minutes of them, trailing and whatnot. And of course, there were 2, goals by former Lightning members, which is always extremely annoying. But I thought the team played really well. They definitely pulled ahead in that third period. And, this is a team in Vegas that, you look at all the trade deadline acquisitions, you wouldn't think they're struggling the way that they are, but, they're in the heat of the playoff race too. This was an important game for them. So they were in this game the entire way through, and they were really trying to win this game. And I thought the Lightning did a really good job of shutting them down for the most part.
It was definitely a tough team. I mean, they're fighting as hard as they can to get that playoff spot. They've made some absolutely ridiculous last-minute acquisitions that, if they don't get a wild card, it makes the GM look pretty bad. I think personally, some of the moves that they made in general make the league look bad. So, hopefully that does get addressed in the offseason. But man, do you know exactly how high they are over cap?
I don't have the number in front of me. If you do, that would be.
I want to say it's something or like 19 million over the cap. And
Actually, I do know this number. Sorry, Joe.
Okay.
I do know this number. It's 21.5 million over the cap as of today. And I know this because I sent something in our group that said 21.5 million over the cap doesn't have the same ring to it as 8 million over the cap did. So they're beating us. They're beating us at our own game, really.
And, from what I understand, quite a bit of that is actually going to be guys that come back and right at the playoffs. So they're going to have not only just a team that's over the cap, but one that's playing with players that are over it. So personally, not to be too much of a hypocrite, I kind of would like to see Vegas fail at this. When the Lightning did it, they were already a pretty strong team and kind of exploited it. I feel like this exploitation is to get a team that wasn't quite in the playoff picture, that bump that they need in order to get up. But they already just won a cup, so it was good to see them lose this game against the Bolts.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of those guys that, we've already talked about, Braden Point, he had a really nice game, especially a really nice third period against Vegas, with his 2 goals. And I was really happy with how his road trip went in general. I would say the peak of it was probably in the next game that we're going to talk about against San Jose. But he's a guy that ultimately, he scored 50 last year, and it doesn't feel like he's going to score 50 again this year, and it hasn't felt that way all year. But the numbers keep going up, even as the games played, slightly go up. The numbers are going up at a rapid rate right now, and there's a chance, there is a chance he could hit 50.
There absolutely is. He's at 41 right now with still looks like we got 12 games left in the season. So there certainly is hope. Another guy that was red hot in this game was Nikita Kucherov. 1 goal, 3 assists. Some of them were, we've said it all on the show 100 different times, 100 different ways, and it seems like that's the way he makes his assists as well. You never know what to expect. He's going to, throw it a different way each time. You just got to be ready for it. And one guy that has been ready for it over and over again has been Anthony Duclair, who I can't remember if it was in this game, honestly, or the next game where he started playing with Kucherov, and looks like he's fitting in pretty well there.
Yeah, I'm not to toot our own horn a little bit. Is this the best first line in hockey right now? They really are just dominating everybody right now, and part of that has to do with Kucherov. So
yeah, I couldn't imagine being Duclair, going from not just one of the worst teams in the league, but really you could almost put that team on an all-time list, to arguably the best line in the NHL. What a transformation of his season that he's seen.
Yeah.
Let's continue on. Yeah, let's continue on with before getting to our second game, a quick word from our sponsor. This just in, shop RBLRsports.com. It's officially your place for unofficial Tampa Bay sports merch. Select your ultra premium, high-end, luxury extravagance, special edition, limited time, and just downright fancy gear from shop.rblrsports.com. We have everything to show your support for this podcast and Tampa Bay sports, such as hats, shirts, more hats. So click on over to shop.rblrsports.com. Use promo code BOLTS to get 10% off your order. Now that the bills are paid, let's get on to Thursday with the Sharks. Yeah, you
right.
like
that's not as fancy as Matter, Jake, but I like that. I like that.
Yeah, so I can sit there and try to figure out a way to work it in cleverly, or just make sure I get it out in journal, because I'm likely to forget if I don't have it structured. But on to Thursday with the Sharks. In this game, unlike the Golden Knights, who are desperate to prove they can get back into the playoffs, the Sharks are a team with nothing to lose, which can be equally as dangerous. 2 periods through the game, the score was 1-1, with the Sharks outshooting the Lightning 16-10. However, the power play to start the third saw the Bolts score early, and they would not relinquish another goal from there. 4-1 final, Tampa Bay. And while we do have the 3 stars of the week to look forward to after our recaps, I want to throw out an honorable mention this game for Dave Mishkin, who powered through what could best be described as sounding like he had laryngitis. However, through his multiple tweets, he said he was good, and he really roughed one through there.
Yeah, he did not sound great in his call, specifically on the point or the Paul goal in the first period. A lot of Lightning fans are really, really worried about Mish. But hey, if he says he's fine, he's fine. He's going to pull through it.
Yeah, he definitely tweeted that he was okay, that he was just a little bit hoarse and he sounded better the next game. But the number of people that tweeted out asking if he was all right is also kind of endearing as well.
Yeah, I mean, people love Mish, so I can definitely understand that. But through 40 minutes, I don't think the shots on goal really indicated how poorly the Lightning were playing. Like it was bad. The one goal they got was off a weird play where nobody knew where the puck was except for Nick Paul, because it hit off the ref and went right into Paul's area so he could score. Other than that, they're getting outshot. They only got their 10th shot of the game with like a minute left in the second period. They were constantly getting outplayed in the neutral zone. It was a bad first 40 minutes, but again, they took their 2 points and they ran with them. They had a pretty good third period, and I guess right now that's really all that matters. I know that I've screamed on this show when I've made occasional appearances that sometimes all you need to do is win. And this is one of those times where, they didn't play all that well, but they found a way to win and, just get your 2 points and get out of there.
I mean, and that is the most important thing at the end of the day for a game like this, is making sure you get those 2 points. And, they did a lot of scrambling around. They obviously had to rely on their special teams in order to make sure that they secured them. Killing 2 penalties and then scoring on a power play is pretty typical Lightning fashion on how they get ahead on the scoreboard. Luckily, they didn't get burned by their play in the early portion of the game. I did think, though, again, seeing Duclair out there with Kuch and Point, some of the passing plays that they were able to do and how Duclair's got such speed to go in and really forecheck the opposing team, generate turnovers, and then get into the hands of someone like Kucherov, who can do magic once he's got it from that point. That line is clicking so well, and this is really a game that I thought showcased it.
Yeah, so this was Anthony Duclair's, I guess, revenge game because, he's coming back to San Jose. His goal was beautiful. Like coming into the zone with speed, Nikita Kucherov has to feather him the puck, and then Duclair just makes 5 or 6 different moves and backhands it past. I believe it was Mackenzie Blackwood who was making his return in net from injury. But for the Sharks, who cares? Like they've had a real bad season. So ultimately, I thought third period was good. Like it should have been the entire game, but the third period was good, and it's. I know we haven't talked a lot about the overall structure of the team for a while, but I do think in that game, I know that the Sharks were out shooting them and kind of dictating play a little bit, but I thought the defensive structure was a lot better in that game. It wasn't that good going forward, especially in LA, but I thought overall in this road trip, it was actually kind of solid.
Well, I mean, and it also shows in the stats. In this game in particular, the Lightning had 18 blocked shots. That's the contrast with the Sharks' 22 shots on net. So they were blocking nearly half of the shots that were taken, and that's something that I've been pretty vocal about as well. If you're going to play this style of defense, you really need to make sure that you're blocking the shots that are going to be dangerous ones for your goalie, and they did it well enough. Was that 16 shots on goal through 2 periods for the Sharks isn't a ton overall, and 22 isn't a very high number. So I wouldn't say that they got completely outshot, personally, but knowing that the shots that they were taking, if they're dangerous ones, they were being blocked quite a bit. To me, that's a huge stat on how they're playing defensively. And then you even look at, from the physical side, 17 hits is a pretty large number. That changes the dynamic of a game as well, just from being able to wear out opponents. And no surprise, the hit leader of the night was actually it was Jeannot and Dumba, each with 4. Those are both guys that love to take bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we'll bring it up now, even though he did also have penalties in the LA and Anaheim game. I do want to ask this question. To you specifically, do you think that Matt Dumba takes too many penalties?
So the number doesn't matter to me. You can take an unlimited number of penalties. It's when you take them and how you take them that come down to things. If you're taking a penalty because you're hooking a guy down because you got beat, that could be said to be a smart penalty to take, right? Because you're potentially changing where they could have a 2-on-1 or a breakaway goal. But it also means that you were out of position. If it's something that you do, now and then in order to make sure they don't have any chances, fine, it's a smart penalty to take. However, if that's your primary way of playing defense is to hook the guy and hold him down, well, then you have to reevaluate your game a bit. That said, with Duclair, or I'm sorry, with
Dumba.
On Dumba, thank you. I'm trying to pull up his stats to see what how many he's had since he's been here. So it looks like
he's had 5 minor penalties in a fight. He's been here 7 games.
6 on that road trip, right?
Yeah. The next closest guy is Connor Sheary. In that span of when they acquired him versus today. He has 3 minor penalties, and he sat out a game. He was healthy scratched against San Jose, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it was LA, one of the two.
Yeah, and he had a rough ride in Vegas, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was the San Jose game for him. The penalties that he took, I think that they've been a couple of ones that kind of could have gone either way. Maybe that he was a bit too aggressive. But I also don't mind that so much in a defenseman as long as it's not burning the team. The Lightning are very, very good on the penalty kill, and it makes them difficult to play against when you're going to be getting sticked in the hands. He's going to be laying a hit, and he might get called every now and then. But until it ends up being a detriment, I'm willing to give him a little bit longer of a leash, and knowing that once playoffs come, they probably aren't going to call nearly as many of them. That's my take, at least.
I think there's just going to be more infractions. It's going to be a smaller percentage. I think the amount is probably going to be the same, but the amount of stuff he gets away with is also going to increase. So,
right.
That's the part when you say that we'll figure it out. We only got 12 games left, to figure out if this is a problem.
What are they going to tell him to do? Just play more clean? This isn't a guy that's ever been a stranger to penalty minutes. Looking at his history, he's somewhere around 20 to 30. I'm doing penalty minutes divided by 2, but 20 to 30 penalties called against him in a season. That's every other game or so. And he's on the high side right now. He's also adjusting to a new team and maybe trying to establish himself. It's something that can be reeled in. And as of right now, and if the Lightning had a terrible penalty kill, I would think that they would want to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen. But until then, be someone that's tough to play against. And, and I kind of like where it's going because outside really of Chernak, we don't really have that. We're not a very hard defensive team. Like you're not going to get a lot of guys that are just going to hit you and hurt you. Lilleberg might be up and coming where he'll be someone that can lay in a really good hit, but the rest of the guys don't take a ton of penalties like that, right? So maybe it's good to have someone with a little bit of an edge to put a little bit of fear into some of the other players.
Yeah, absolutely. This could
And we'll
be
see
the
how it
thing
plays.
where,
I could be 100% wrong, when we keep going here. But
we'll see if
speaking
it
of keep going,
changes.
let's look at the Saturday night game against the Kings. That was one that started again at 10:30. Another real nice and late one. They play a team that was desperate to earn a wild card spot as well. LA makes Tampa pay for defensive mistakes with 5 minutes left in the game. The Bolts found themselves down 3-1, with one of the lowest goals against average in the league, being the LA Kings. Clawing back into this one was no easy task. However, last-minute heroics from Steven Stamkos, netting 2 goals in the last 5 minutes, forced this game to overtime. However, another bad defensive mistake allowed the Kings to quickly close it out in OT. 3-4 final for the Kings. Lightning only getting 1 point out of this one.
Yeah,
what do you think about our defensive play?
Oh boy, this game. Oh boy, this was bad. I want to say it was the 1-0 goal, the 2-1 or 2-0 goal, and then the overtime winner. I just had my hands over my eyes, just like, this mistake cannot happen in the playoffs. And again, I'm not gonna bash our world-class goaltender. I think you have to make saves on one of them, because there were a couple of them where I was like, okay, if you're seeing the same thing over and over again and your defense is making the same types of mistakes, not only do they have to adjust, you also have to adjust, I think, to a certain extent.
And to be fair, he completely stole the game from Florida, Vasi did, where he played out of his mind. So it would definitely have been nice to see him come out and save 1 or 2 more of those as he's getting a little bit back into form. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, absolutely. But it was one of those games where you look at the negatives, which was the defensive play, specifically on the goals and a couple of the non-goals by LA, a couple of the rush chances they had. And then you look at the positives, and hey, they made a really nice comeback with, I think it was 3 or 4 minutes to go. Like, someone that I've been hypercritical of this season, Steven Stamkos, really putting the team on his back to help them at least secure a point. Neither one of those goals were at 5-on-5, but we'll ignore that. As long as he's scoring goals at this point, I don't care. But I'm more happy with the way that the top 6 in general has been playing since the Duclair acquisition, because I think it's given the second line in particular an opportunity to breathe a little bit. With someone like Hagel and Cirelli playing on the same line, they're able to be that dynamic duo, not only on the penalty kill, but also at 5-on-5.
So yeah, I completely agree with that. I didn't think that Duclair would ever be a guy that's going to slot into a top line role. Obviously, more than thrilled that my assertion was wrong. And having Hagel on the second line makes all the difference in the world, because he's somebody that's much more of a playmaker than just Cirelli on his own. Cirelli desperately needs somebody like Hagel in order to be able to play at a high level. And obviously, Steven Stamkos is somebody at this point in his career. I don't want us to sound too derogatory, but he kind of needs to be carried a bit, especially when it comes to the playmaking and zone entries, for that matter. And once he gets to his spot, though, you give the man the puck, and he still has one of the best shots in the league, as he demonstrated in this game as well. But he needs other guys like that in order to take some of the I guess, I don't know if the word pressure is the right thing off of Stamkos, but in order to give him the tools that he needs to be effective, for sure. And look, man, you get 2 goals with the last 5 minutes of a game. That's as clutch as it gets. And again, the Kings are desperate. They're desperate to get that playoff spot. They're like just a couple of points back. Same thing as Vegas. So that's a tough team to play against. And they're third. I don't know if I said this before, but they're third in the league for the least goals allowed for the entire season. That's a tough team to play against, and they know how to shut it down defensively. So it's a huge job, a huge task to be able to get those last 2 goals there.
I'd like to offer a trade to the Kings this offseason where we acquire their defensive coach and we give them Jeff Blashill. I think that is a fair trade. I think they would like that a lot. And, just hang up the phone whenever they accept and never talk to them again.
If you happen to have some blackmail or dirt on the GM in order to make that happen, I can get you a meeting with JBB to see if we can't facilitate a trade like that. I'd be willing to trade Blashill to just about any team.
So, I know we talked about Duclair a lot, but you had mentioned you never saw him coming into the top 6 role, or at least even a top line role. Like when they got him originally, it was like, oh, this third line guy is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But I think the problem that when we had that assumption was, okay, if you put him on the third line, somebody needs to go up. No, I think the Lightning did it correctly. Duclair goes in the top 6, everybody goes down, and their assignments change a little bit. Their pressure gets taken off them a little bit, and they've been stellar since they got Duclair. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah. Again, I completely agree with you. I thought he was going to be someone that was kind of like Cirelli, with the way that he was going to not really generate a ton of offense, based on his work, but somebody that would go there and stir things up, and then because he's stirring things up, goals will end up going in. However, he's playing with one of the 2 best players in the league, the best line in the league, and he's keeping up with it. Let's move on to the next game, because in this one he didn't really have his normal lineup, that is for Duclair, because we saw Braden Point and Hedman out. And as if one overtime game on this road trip wasn't enough, on back-to-back nights we get to see extra hockey as the Lightning and Ducks fought during the final game of the road trip. This game would see Johansson get the start in net, his first start in 4 weeks. He would have to be sharp, as this game his teammates in white looked visibly that they were on a back-to-back and at the end of a road trip. Plus they were missing again Hedman and Pointer. The Lightning held on, never allowing the game to get away from them, and in overtime, nearly an exact clone copy of the 2-0 goal Cirelli and Hagel had in Vegas was witnessed again, as Cirelli and Hagel went in alone 2-0 and closed out the road trip with an OT win. That was, again, a spectacular finish to a game, and man, Cirelli and Hagel, that goal really looked like it was just a complete mirror, exact, picture perfect example of what they had done before.
I don't understand how. I mean, I get how it happens on like the PK and the 3-on-3 overtime, but to have it happen twice in a single road trip, the same goal, is kind of crazy. I love watching those 2 play together. Like, even when they don't put up the points, they're guys where you can look at them and go, I know you guys are like, whenever we have problems with the team, it's not with you 2, because you guys are playing really, really hard, even if sometimes you don't play that well because everybody has their off time, but like, you're always playing well. So
if they had a stat line for effort, they'd be at the top of it every time.
Yeah, 100%. I think, that lays credence to my Brendan Hagel will be the next captain of the Tampa Lightning theory, but that's for another day. We're getting a chat from our friend Jake Ricker, who's currently on a plane right now. Shout out Vogue Williams for bringing the thunder. Vogue Williams, who does a lot of the in-arena stuff for the Lightning, as specifically their hype songs, was in the crowd for this one. And, we've used Bo in a lot of our TBR videos as well. So a lot of people got to see him in Anaheim. He was shown on the broadcast during the Anthony Duclair goal, which I thought was very cool. And just focusing back to the game, It was one of those games where you look at it as a whole, you're like, okay, you went to overtime with the Ducks. But second half of a back-to-back, you could very much tell they were on the second half of back-to-back. They're finishing a 5-game road trip. And most importantly, they won. Like that is about as perfect as you can ask for, especially with Jonas Johansson playing really well.
Yeah, and Johansson, that's really tough playing once every 4 weeks to be able to come in like that and play as well as he did. He had a pretty good save percentage on this one. As I quickly pull it up here, he was .938 on it. 30 of 32 shots he saved, and he's a guy that has just been coming in clutch all season for the Lightning when Vasi hasn't been in service. Obviously on a back-to-back, you're not going to put Vasilevsky in, save him. And on a team that you could say that, they're a terrible team in a lot of ways, the Ducks, they still put a lot of pressure on the Lightning, being on the second part of that back-to-back. And again, it was I guess this was like an 8:30 game, right? So it was,
Yeah.
they didn't even have a full 24 hours between games for rest there.
Yeah, they had to travel too. I'm not sure who makes the schedule in the NHL, but they do a terrible job. They really, really do a terrible job. One person that I want to shout out before we move forward into our 3 stars, thought Luke Glendening had a fantastic game, both defensively. He had the goal in the second goal to put them up 2-1. He was really good on the penalty kill. I did think it was weird that Austin Watson was on the power play, but again, that's a topic for another time.
Well, we can talk about that as well. And with Glendening, he was also pretty clutch in the the LA game, winning faceoffs in order to allow the Lightning to be able to pull Vasilevsky, and later in that game, his faceoff wins were huge, making sure that the Lightning had possession of the puck, and he did that again this game as well as tallying a goal. This game against the Ducks, we saw scoring from almost unusual people in the sense that it was Duclair. He's becoming a regular goal scorer, but he's not Kuch, he's not Point, he's not Vasi. Glendening, and that one I really like because Watson and Jeannot got an assist on that one, and again that was Jeannot's first point since December. So it's good to his first point since December. Yep. So to get back into it is great. And you said defensively he played really well also. I mean, how many times did we see Killorn right at the front of the net, trying to bash one home, and the team in general did pretty well with boxing him out and making sure he didn't put one in to be yet another bolt to score on his former team.
There was one moment or one particular play where I was like, you cannot allow Killorn to get that wide open in front of the net. And thankfully, Johansson was there with his right pad and made the save. But otherwise,
really close.
He wasn't noticeable, which is crazy because Alex Killorn always seemed to make an impact when he was with the Lightning. And I try not to bring Steve Dangle up too much because that's the guy that I watch the most hockey of. But he was like, ex-players scoring against your team is always going to happen. And it happened for us in the Vegas game with Marchessault and with Howden. And it almost happened with Hannafin. I think Hannafin hit the post, which future Bolt scoring on the Lightning would have been a little different. But no, Killorn getting a goal, I think, would have broken my psyche, even if the Lightning would have won. So,
well, yeah, luckily he didn't get any on that. Who are you bringing up as well?
What do you mean?
You had brought up Glendening, and then there was someone else you were saying that played.
So Austin Watson got power play time.
Oh, right.
Which was really, really weird. Specifically because I know Point is out and I know Hedman is out. So Radish was manning the first unit and Dumbo was manning the second unit on the defensive side. Yep. I don't remember who took his place on the first unit. I think it might have been Nick Paul. But Austin Watson was on the first power play unit on the second power play of the game. I don't understand that at all.
Well, I mean, I think that just came down to really who you had for personnel. All right, so if you have those two main keys out, you're going to be swapping people in and out. And then, if I'm not mistaken, when that penalty was called, Kucherov was out there already with Point for an extended period of time, which drew the penalty. So they're taken out.
I thought they stayed out there.
Um,
Because Watson had
so
the
then
net
maybe it
front
was
presence.
maybe I'm trying to think of who was on the ice at the same time, but whoever was out there, that usually the second line or that would have filled in, wasn't available. So why not put him in front? He's a big body that can get to the front of the net. And while I would have probably preferred to see Jeannot out there in front of the net, Watson's been working really hard for the team. I think he's been doing pretty well for the team as in addition. So give him his chance in front, and what's the worst that happens?
I think the worst that happens would have been him scoring and then Cooper looking
Staying?
at it being like, this is a good idea. I'm going to keep doing this. So glad that didn't happen.
That's pretty fair. Yeah. Well, so the Lightning closed this one out. That 2-0 goal, like I said, just a complete clone copy earlier. They worked on it. In fact, Sorelli was driving to the front of the net by himself, turned around, looked, saw Hagel catching up, slowed way down before he passed him, and then Hagel gave him the return feed to bury a one-timer in the back of the net. Those guys obviously work really well off of each other, and the empty net or the 2-0 goal that they scored earlier is just more indicative of how well they are meshing together, especially on the penalty kill. Good win for the Lightning to get those important 2 points. Let's move on to the 3 stars of the week, because we've talked quite a bit about a bunch of players that actually aren't on it. So starting off with the number 3 star, and it's time to give him his due. Braden Point. Braden Point had 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points on the week. Even though the majority of the play we've talked about hasn't been his line, that's almost because we just come to expect scoring from the top line, and when we get other guys scoring, it's just that much more impressive. However, having the 7 points in, it was only 3 games because he sat out the one, was a great job to earn the number 3 star.
He was great. Him, again, I know we mentioned this earlier, he's got a shot at 50, which is insane to say after the way he started the year, which wasn't terrible necessarily, but he was scoring at like a 30-goal pace, 32-goal pace. I'm pretty sure he got 16 goals in his last 15 games or something like that. So
the numbers look like it.
It's ridiculous. If he keeps missing games, he won't hit 50. But, hopefully he'll come back in the road ahead and, pot some more, and then he'll hit 50 before game 80 and can set out some more games for body maintenance. Really, really happy with the way that Pointer's been playing so far. And I think it was really key to show how the Lightning power play didn't really work out without Pointer. Even if they had someone like Tanner Jeannot in front instead of Austin Watson, they didn't have the proper guy in the bumper slot on the power play, which I think the main reason that didn't work against Anaheim. So when you've got a guy that can draw attention like Braden Point, it really does open up the ice, unlike someone like Austin Watson, for example. So,
well, you could definitely see how much he was missed on that power play when trying to give that feed to the bumper spot. Doesn't work at all. The way the Lightning's power play is set up is very specific to having specific guys in key spots, and definitely miss him not being in the lineup for that game. Doing the math, it looks like he is on pace for about 47 goals on the season. However, that's just 3 away. If he gets a little bit hot, it wouldn't take much to bump him up to that 50 mark again. And I mean, look, that's 5 goals in 3 games. So I'd say that he's getting hot right now, is the rest of the team at the right time of year. Moving on to our number 2 star, and it's no one's surprise, is Nikita Kucherov. Kucherov had 1 goal and a massive 8 assists for 9 points in the course of last week. He's currently in the number one spot for most points in the league against Nathan McKinnon. I believe they are right about the same number of games played, or they have the same number of games remaining, is what I should say. So he's 1 point ahead, which actually says a lot about McKinnon as well, with how many points he's putting up in order to stay up at the top of that list there. But Nikita Kucherov with another huge week.
I mean, what can we say about him that we haven't said already? Like, he is definitely the best winger in the world, maybe the best player in the world this year, and is the reason the Lightning are in the spot that they're in. Like, and early in the year, he was doing it with his goal scoring, and he decided, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to set up everybody else on my team, like Braden Point, like Nick Paul in the San Jose game, like Anthony Duclair.
What a funny observation. I hadn't really thought about that. He really did almost like turn a switch where he went straight to, doing assists and the occasional empty net goal, which is completely unlike what he did to start the season.
Well, I was like, oh man, Cooch could hit 60 this year. That would be pretty cool. And then he just stopped scoring goals. And so like he's still probably going to hit 40. But it's it's one of those things.
Well, he's over 40. He's at 40.
Oh, you're right. He could still hit 50. That would be crazy
if you wanted to.
250 50 goal scorers on the same team. But it's really about what he wants to do and how he's going to dictate the way that the game is played. Especially in this road trip where maybe the Lightning weren't playing the best competition, but they needed wins. And Kucherov made it very clear, especially in that San Jose game. All right, we're not playing very well in this one through 40 minutes. I'm just going to go out and get 3 points, like 3 more points, which is wild to see. And some of the passes he made this road trip were unbelievable.
Well, he's definitely able to take over games. 123 points already with what, like 10 or 12 games to go.
12 games to go, yeah.
That is absolutely an incredible clip. Definitely deserves, I think, to be in the Conn Smythe conversation for I'm sorry, not Conn Smythe, the MVP of the league for his team. McDavid should be in that conversation as well. Obviously, he's starting to come up, back up. He's got 117 points. McKinnon's in that conversation. You could say that Cooch was doing more with less, which I've heard, but now Braden Point's starting to come around, so it's a little bit tougher to say that. But I think without a shadow of a doubt, the Lightning would not be making the playoffs if they didn't have Kucherov. They wouldn't have a chance of making the playoffs, where the other teams, probably still could figure a way in.
I mean, that's like saying, oh, Nathan McKinnon doesn't deserve consideration because he's got Cale Makar and Mikko Rantanen. And Jonathan Drouin has been playing amazingly well in an Avalanche uniform. Like, it's not fair. Just because one other guy is putting up decent numbers, who he is setting up, by the way, Kucherov is the one setting Braden Point up for the majority of these goals. That shouldn't diminish Kucherov's MVP candidacy, because Kucherov has, I believe it's like 51 or 49, like around there, of goals the Lightning have scored, he has factored in on. That is absurd.
See, I might be able to pull that up pretty quickly. So it looks like the Lightning have a total goal for of 250. So he's at 122 for 123. So that is, almost 50% of every single goal. Just to compare quickly, 269 for the Avs, and it's still getting McKinnon quite a bit of.
No, that's not as high. That's not as high of a number. I think he should be disqualified.
It's not as high, and sorry for blanking earlier. The Hart Trophy, I think, is definitely Cooch is someone that's well deserved. But let's go on to our number one star for this past week, and that is going to be the red hot Anthony Duclair. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, but he sets the record for the most consecutive games with a point to start a Lightning career. Uh, Beyond just being a point guy, he's been a difference maker from the trade line acquisition. God, I love this trade. We've already talked so much about him. Michael, do you have anything else to add?
I love watching Anthony Duclair because I always feel like he's going to do something. And it helps that he's on the same line as Cooch and Point. But I'm always like, all right, Duke is on the ice. Like, something's about to happen. And I have so far to not, be disappointed. He's put up a point in every game he's played so far. He's had a couple of nice goals and a couple of goals that, and this is important because the playoffs are coming up, aren't that nice. A couple of greasy goals, which are perfect playoff goals. So if you can get a guy that is good enough with coming into the zone and, parking himself at the front of the net and just banging and crashing and getting rewarded, Anthony Duclair is your guy, and he can do all this other stuff. I think it's a little too early to say, is this one of Julian Brisebois' best trades ever? But it's looking like it.
It's definitely shaping up to be something on the same scale as like when we got Coleman. He's playing really well. His first 56 games that he played in the season with the Sharks, he had 16 goals. He's got 7 games played at the Lightning. He's got 5. Almost a third of his goals on the entire season have been in 7 games with the Lightning. He went on a team where he was a -12. He's now a +5. A guy, again, completely rejuvenated, going from the worst team in the league to, again, the best line. So happy for him. He's played really, really well. And, man, first star of the week, all the accolades to Anthony Duclair. Welcome to the Bolts, buddy. Moving on, we're going to look at the road ahead. We have either, 2 or 3 games to look forward to, depending on when we get our next episode in. We'll cover all 3. Right now we have the Bruins on Wednesday, the Islanders coming up on Saturday, and then on the 1st of April, which is Monday, it'll be the Red Wings. The Red Wings are starting to fall out and look more like pretenders than actual contenders, but they'd have a big matchup on Wednesday with the Bruins.
Yeah, I look at the standings right now. If you look at the standings, so the Lightning have 1 fewer game played than the Bruins. They have only had 2 less wins than the Bruins.
I was paying attention to that just before the podcast and noticed that for sure.
12 points behind the Bruins, despite only having 2 less wins.
Those loser points are important.
The loser points stink. If you lose, you lose. But regardless, it's not that much of a disconnect between these 2 teams. Like, they've beaten Boston already this year. They can beat them again. If they face them in the playoffs, they can beat them again. Like, it's not like the Panthers, for example, who have 46 wins, the Rangers who have 47. Like, this is a team that the Lightning could match up pretty well against, both on Wednesday and in the playoffs. And so this is going to be a playoff style matchup. And I wouldn't be surprised to see, a couple fights, a couple of scrums, and, hopefully a Lightning victory.
Having 2 days off is nice. Those road trips can be brutal with constantly moving around, being bussed, being flown. Games starting at 10:30 at night for you, and having a couple days off to get reacclimated before they play the Bruins, I think is great. They're on a point streak for sure right now, going 7-1-2 in the last 10 games. I think that's 5 games straight with a point. Too bad they didn't get the win against the Kings. And that'll be a good test. It's always something that I say probably every single time that it's a good test when they play one of the top-rated teams in the league. The loser points portion is definitely I think, more of an asset than you would give credit to the Bruins, because it shows that they're really hard to close out. You can't just win a game and not expect them to come back, because they've come back in a lot of those games and just weren't able to win in overtime. And that doesn't even show you, let's see, regulation only wins. They've won 3 times in overtime. They've lost 15 times in overtime. I think that's something that, we were complaining when the Lightning had lost, 4 or 5 times in OT at the beginning of the season. And 15, I can understand them being a little bit frustrated. But they're in such a strong position that it's not going to end up mattering in terms of their points. So knowing that they're a tough team to close out, I really hope the Lightning do come in with some determination and really give them a showing. As we look at this playoff picture too, something I point out every season is that if you look at the goal differentials between teams, the further into the season you get, the more they start to paint the picture as to what teams are going to make the playoffs and which teams aren't. Typically, if you're going to make the playoffs, you need about 95 points. And almost always, the teams that have a positive goal differential end up making the playoffs, including the wild card. Right now, we have a couple of outliers with the Philadelphia Flyers in the 3rd position in the Metro with a -8 goal differential, which is a little bit strange. And then the Red Wings being a +6 that are looking on the outside for number 3 in the wild card spot. We get to play the Red Wings, coming up this next week as well. Do you think that they're a team that might be able to force their way past the Capitals?
I mean, I was just going to say, if you think the Flyers, the goal differential is bad, check out the Capitals. It's -27. But Detroit has been a little bit better since they got Dylan Larkin back. But as you were saying beforehand, that team was free falling without their captain. Like, they had pretty solidly locked up wild card 1. As soon as Larkin got hurt, they fell off a cliff, and now they're out of the playoffs. They're going to give the Lightning everything they have. It might not be, the Bruins are pretty solidly in their position. They might not throw everything out there tomorrow when they play the Lightning. The Red Wings and the Islanders, who are the 2 teams I think we're facing this week after the Bruins, those 2 teams will just, for 60 to 65 minutes, make your life a living hell. And you have to be ready for that, because they are desperately trying to make the playoffs right now. And I can't remember the season series against either one of these teams. I believe they are leading the Detroit one and are tied on the Islanders one. But again, I could be wrong.
In terms of season series, when it comes to this time of year, everything changes, and it shouldn't be go unstated that the Lightning are hungry too. They're a team that really has started to turn things around. They went from being somebody that I didn't think had a chance to be able to make the playoffs, much less make a run, and then made a few acquisitions and got some young blood in there. All of a sudden, they've turned things around, and those road trips are difficult, but they got a point out of every single game. They're keeping their head above water, and with their 85 points and 71 games played, 11 games left, if they split, they'll hit that 95-point mark, which again is pretty much my benchmark of where teams need to be in order to scrape into the playoffs. They can continue winning, and potentially could jump the Maple Leafs as well to actually get into the 3rd spot in the Atlantic. Who knows who they're going to end up matching up against? You don't like the notion of that?
Could you imagine? Could you imagine them jumping the Leafs after this whole year where they got close? I think it was late January, and then the Maple Leafs pulled away again. They finally do it, and their first round matchup is the Florida Panthers. That would be tough, because I think the Panthers are the class of the East. That would be tough.
Well, right now it's completely all up for grabs. There's absolutely no clarity in terms of the playoff picture, because the Bruins and Panthers have the same number of points, 1 game extra played for 1. So that can flip back and forth. So the Maple Leafs potentially could play the Panthers. The Lightning could jump into that conversation as well. But even if they're one of the wild card teams, when it comes to the Metro, there's only a 1-point difference between the Rangers and the Hurricanes to see who ends up playing the wild card spot. So the playoff picture is only starting to really shape up for who's going to make the wild card. In terms of what the matchups are going to be, it's pretty much anyone's guess.
5 less wins than the Panthers the Bruins have, and they are tied in points. I hate this loser point system. I really don't like it. But again,
well, I mean, it could go to what they have in soccer. I think MLS might even have it 3 points for a win, and then you have your loser point and 1 additional point if you win in overtime. And that's something that could be a discussion for another day to maybe look at. If you don't like the loser point, at least you get 1 point for surviving regulation. So right now we would face and I know we got to wrap up at some point, but right now we'd face the Rangers, who are the best team in the league, by the way, the best team in the tied for the best team in the league with Vancouver. If we played 1 versus 8, we would play the Carolina Hurricanes. It's not an easy task either way. There's no doubt there's some really strong teams. Let's say we jump up to the 3rd spot in the Atlantic. We would play either the Bruins or the Panthers, who are tied for the 2nd most points in the league. The playoffs are definitely going to be a gauntlet, and the Lightning getting wins now is the most important thing that they can do. Well, look, I am going to close it out. I'm going to end on one additional thought, and that is that when the Lightning are hot like they're getting right now, when you've got Vasilevsky doing Vasi things, when you have Kucherov doing Kucherov things, and when you have Stamkos scoring 5-on-5, this ends up being a team that can beat absolutely anybody in the league on any given day. So I think we're in a really good spot for the Bolts compared to where we were earlier. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe. If you didn't, comment below how much you missed Jake to get him back. Thank you for watching RBL Lightning. Go Bolts. Not necessary. Go Bolts.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.